Well, it's a kibbutz community which has been in existence for about 65 years, and population around 900. Lovely place, a little bit of greenery in the desert. We don't normally lock our doors. We have a very comfortable lifestyle. We call our life on the kibbutz, we have called it 95% heaven and 5% hell. The 5% hell refers to the times where we have rocket attacks, which has been for the last 20 years. But when that passes, life goes back to being heaven. Well, our heaven has been destroyed. We don't know what we're going back to, if we can go back when the war situation ends. We'll just have to sit it out and wait and rebuild and start from scratch.
So when did you first realise this attack was underway on Saturday?
6:30 in the morning, we got a barrage of rockets, which is not something unusual. And during that barrage, we started hearing automatic gunfire around us and explosions, I presume from hand grenades or RPGs being fired. And then we realized that it's a lot more serious. We were in our safe room or bomb shelter in the house, which is actually designed for safety during rocket attacks, not actually frontal attacks. And we had the telephones cut out, part of the electricity cut out. Internet reception was very poor because it's a fortified bunker. So we were basically cut off for many, many hours until we realized the severity of what was going on. And we were just hoping and praying that we would get out alive, which was... after many hours, you lose track of time in a situation like that. Yeah. We were extricated by the military. They broke into our house and said, "Come immediately, come with us." And they, under gunfire, they extricated us from the house and took us to walked about 1 kilometer with the military guarding us to the buses that were waiting to extricate us or evacuate us. That's a picture you see right now. Is us being extricated from the kibbutz to a safe place.
And how many people were in that safe room for? It must have been like, I think it was around 30 hours or so.
Yeah, just my wife and me. But those people who have kids, like my son who was in the kibbutz, there were 5 of them in a safe room. No water, no food, no toilet facilities, and absolute fear of what's going to come through the door.
And where is your...
We regard ourselves...
Sorry, where is your home in the kibbutz? Is it closer to the Gaza side or more towards the other side on the east? And do you think that might have played a role in the fact that you actually survived?
More to the east side, but it doesn't matter which side is closer because they actually came in through the road, which is from the east. The access road is from the east.
Right.
They came in that way.
And did any rockets or explosions hit your home while you were in it?
Yes. I heard the pieces falling on the roof. But again, it's not something terribly unusual.
At times, did it think it was only a matter of time before the terrorists would actually get to you? Well,
we thought it was just a matter of time that the army would arrive, and that was unfortunately delayed by a long time, which I think cost a lot of lives because all around us, many of our neighbors were slaughtered in their homes. The babies were killed and others were just taken as hostages back to Gaza.
And did you realise when you were in the safe room just the extent of what was going on around you, or not really?
It was impossible to judge the situation if it was just in my neighborhood or if it was in the whole kibbutz or in the neighboring communities. We had no sense of the scale of this disaster.
And when the Israeli troops finally got to you, how confident, because presumably the conflict was still happening in the kibbutz at that stage as well.
Yes.
How confident were you that they were actually Israeli troops and not the terrorists getting inside?
You're absolutely right, because there have been cases where they've dressed up as Israeli troops with the same equipment and same helmets. So everybody asked them, what unit are you from? Of course, in Hebrew. And immediately, by the way they spoke Hebrew, we knew they were Israelis. And they were a paratroop unit that entered our house and extricated us.
And how confronting was it seeing what had happened to your community as you emerged from the house and left?
When we emerged from the house, it was almost in complete darkness, and there were bodies lying everywhere. We couldn't identify them because it was so dark. I presume they were terrorist bodies. There were two armored personnel carriers in front of our house. There were RPGs lying around. There were hand grenades lying around, and many, many, many destroyed vehicles that had been crushed and been blown up, including some of the pickup trucks, what you call utes, used by the terrorists to infiltrate from Gaza, were lying on the side of the road as well.
How many lives do you fear were lost in Kfar Aza? And can you tell us anything about some of the people who did not make it out?
Well, at the moment, we just have an estimate. We have confirmed names, but not the final numbers. I reckon we're about 70 people who were murdered, men, women, and children. Casualties, I'll not even mention, people in hospital. And many missing who we're not sure if they're dead and lying in the gutter somewhere, or who have been kidnapped and are in the Gaza Strip. Some of the stories are horrifying. My wife's best friend has a daughter who was on the kibbutz, was married on the kibbutz, and a son-in-law, they were shot in front of their children. The two children that got away were hiding in a cupboard, and they called their grandmother on the phone, who was overseas, and she was in contact with them all the time. They were in that situation for about 12 hours, two small kids hiding in the cupboard, until they got a social worker to be on the line with them all the time, until the military extracted them. And the third child was missing, and it turned out she's a 4-year-old. She was missing. It turned out that she was wandering around outside, and one of the neighbors grabbed her and took her into his bomb shelter with his kids and his wife, and he was wounded. And I'm not sure what happened to him after that, but his wife and their children and this 4-year-old child who got away from the one house to the other house were taken as hostages to Gaza. 4-year-old child. The family behind me fighting for control of the door, of the window of the bomb shelter. The young couple who just had their first child a month ago. The woman ran out the bomb shelter while her husband was closing the window of the terrorists. And she is a handicapped person, and she normally walks with a crutch. She ran with the baby in her arms and hid in a neighbor's storeroom until the baby started crying, and then she went from door to door trying to get into the houses. And of course, we had instructions not to open the doors in case they were terrorists. So nobody opened the door for her until she got to a house that had a video surveillance camera of the entrance. And of course, they let them in the house, and she hid in the bomb shelter with them. The house was then attacked by terrorists who tried to burn it down and smoke out the family from the bomb shelter. They eventually survived, and they're extricated by the army. But the child is in hospital with a mother because of smoke inhalation.
Terrible, terrible stories of death, but amazing stories of survival as well. Ralph, does it all still seem fairly surreal, or because of the gravity of what happened, it's all very real to you?
You know, in such a shocking situation, you go into survival mode, and only when you're in a safe environment does the actual severity and the shock hit you, and you start trying to work through it. And I'm in that stage now where I don't sleep at nights, have nightmares, and I have. We've all been traumatized over the years from the rocket attacks. For instance, we hear a PA system announcing the flight arriving, or even in the elevator, the lift saying 4th floor or whatever. It's the same sounds that we get when we get the rocket alarm. So we all have this traumatized instinct, and this has just made it a lot worse because we know what comes with it.
Yeah. And Kfar Aza is very close to the Gaza border, only 3 kilometres. Before Saturday, Sorry?
2 kilometres from the border.
Yeah. Before Saturday, what contact and friendships did you have with some of the Palestinians inside Gaza?
I'll give you an example that the kibbutz communities, because of it started off as a socialist movement, are generally on the left side of the political spectrum in Israel and have always been for the peace movement and for good contacts with the Palestinians. And there is a major movement in Israel of people who volunteer to help people in Gaza, and I'm one of those people who offer free service, a voluntary service, to people from Gaza who get permission to get medical treatment in Israel. And we pick them up at the border crossing called Erez, which is just a few miles from my house. It's all coordinated, and we take them to whichever hospital they need to get treatment in Israel. In my case, I was many times taken a family, a woman with her children, who get some specialized cancer treatment, which they can't get in Gaza, to a hospital in Jerusalem, wait for them to get their treatment, and then take them back to the border crossing. The reason for that is once they finally get permission to leave Gaza and come into Israel and get the medical treatment, the cost of getting a taxi on the Israeli side to Jerusalem would be prohibitive. It would be like a month's salary. So we volunteer and do that. So I have made a friendship with a family that I've taken multiple times, and we write to each other. We don't have a common language, but I use Google Translate. And she wished me well when this started, and she hopes that I would survive, and I'm doing the same for her now. We're in contact, but we have to be very, very careful about what we write, because in Israel, of course, we have free media and free speech, but they don't have that same benefit. So I don't ask her any questions which would get her into any sort of complications, but we do care about each other.
And as someone, Ralph, who is keen to see peace in the area, and someone who's gone into Gaza multiple times to help Palestinians get treatment, having been through what you've been through...
I don't actually go into Gaza. I go to the border crossing. I'm not allowed to go into Gaza.
Right.
If I went into Gaza, I'd taken hostage. So I'll wait for them to cross the border, and at the border station, I pick them up.
Yeah. As someone who's keen to facilitate help for Gazans who need medical treatment, how do you feel about having been through the trauma you've been through over the last several days, and your passion for some of the Palestinian people too?
That hasn't changed, because I firmly believe that most of the civilian population in Gaza do want cooperation and living together with the Israelis. But unfortunately, you have to understand that they are governed by a very radical Islamist organization where they don't really have any say about anything. And if they don't follow the line, they'll be all executed or put in jail. So I believe that the inherent goodness of the people of Gaza, but led by a terrible, terrible terrorist organization, that hasn't changed.
Before Saturday, did you feel relatively safe there in Kfar Aza because of government assurances about protection? Was there a kind of government contract with the people who lived in that area about safety? And is that contract now broken?
I don't think the contract is broken, but there was a general sense of being able to rely on the security measures which we have, and it turned out that they were overcome by the Hamas, and it will take many years for that confidence to be rebuilt. And Israel will have to do some serious soul searching about the way that they protect the border communities, because this is a disaster, not much different from the Yom Kippur War surprise attack by Egypt and Syria.
And there is still fighting happening, and there will no doubt be more. Are you determined to rebuild Kfar Aza and live there once again?
The last news I heard last night was that there was fighting just a few kilometers from the kibbutz and in Ashkelon, where some Hamas terrorists landed with paragliders and were attacking the southern part of Ashkelon, a place called Zikim. This morning I heard that scuba divers tried to get in through the beach, and at a place called Mifal Sim, which is a neighboring kibbutz, they also had a clash with the 4 terrorists, which is all a matter of just 2-3 kilometers from my home. Will Kfar Aza rebuild? I think that we probably will. I'm not talking about the physical rebuilding. I'm talking about the emotional rebuilding, which is a lot more difficult than bricks and mortar.
Yeah, indeed. Ralph Lawinsohn, thanks so much for talking to us from north of Tel Aviv, and stay safe.